after the Paris Agreement, we have moved, but nowhere near enough. The UNEP emissions gap report shows that today's nationally determined contributions, even if fully implemented, would put us on a path well above 2 degrees of global warming. And that is a death sentence for many. Those national plans must be a floor, not a ceiling. We must move much faster with a drastic cut on emissions. The renewables revolution makes it possible. Clean energy has never been cheaper and more abundant, powering growth and shielding households and economies from volatile fossil fuel markets. With the right support, it is essential that most countries peak emissions now, slash them in half this decade, hit net zero by 2050, and go net negative after. The principle of common but differentiated responsibilities applies, but every country, especially the big emitters, must do more. And the world must pursue a just, orderly and equitable transition away from fossil fuels, as agreed at COP28 in Dubai. It is a climate necessity and a test of economic stability, energy security and responsible governance. We must end market distortions that favour fossil fuels. We must address disinformation aimed at derailing the transition. But governments must support workers and communities still relying on coal, oil and gas with training, protection and new opportunities to go on with their lives in a positive way. I welcome calls for a just transition mechanism and the growing coalition asking for clarity on the transition away from fossil fuels. And I urge countries to ensure that the Belém outcome operationalizes a just transition that is aligned with the 1.5 degree world. Moving faster also means investing in infrastructure and meeting new electricity demand with clean power, including the surge driven by artificial intelligence. That is why I've been calling for a new global coalition on grid, storage and electrification, so clean energy reaches everyone, everywhere, and becomes a default choice. We must also cut methane emissions sharply this decade using proven, affordable measures. And finally, and extremely important, it is imperative to halt and reversing deforestation by 2030, so nature remains a shield, not a casualty. Third, on finance. None of this can happen without finding that it is predictable, accessible and guaranteed. We need a credible path to realizing the Baku finance goal. We developed countries leading to mobilize at least $300 billion by 2035 each year, and a clear route to reaching $1.3 trillion per year by 2035. Simpler rules must allow vulnerable countries to get support quickly. Thinking beyond the COP, the cost of capital for developing economies must fall drastically through concessional finance, debt guarantees and innovative instruments. We know that budgets are limited, but the financial system can unlock and multiply the available resources to achieve a much greater impact. Multilateral development banks must play a decisive role. They need to be bigger, better and bolder, allowing them to massively increase their lending capacity and to leverage private finance at speed and scale. What has been failing is the political will to take the necessary decisions. If the international financial architecture cannot meet this moment, reform becomes a necessity, not an option. Dear members of the media, before I leave for the G20 meeting in South Africa, allow me to say a few words directly to ministers and negotiators. Please engage in good faith to reach an ambitious compromise. 1.5 degrees must be your only red line. This is the hour for leadership. Be bold, follow the science, put people before profit, and please keep your eyes on the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with Victor from Globo. Thank you.
Secretário-Geral, muito bom dia. Estamos ao vivo aqui na Globo News. Bom, com a vinda do presidente Lula para cá ontem, ele se envolveu nas negociações, mas ainda assim há muita resistência de países como China, Índia e Rússia para incluir no texto final da COP a redução da dependência de combustíveis fósseis. O senhor acha que isso pode prejudicar a missão 1.5 e prejudicar o legado da COP30? Aproveito, eu soube que o senhor saiu para jantar ontem aqui em Belém, gostou da cidade, o que o senhor está achando de Belém?
Gostei imenso da cidade de Belém. E devo dizer que em todas as negociações há uma fase em que as posições são ainda divergentes. Para mim é claro que um acordo só será possível se esse acordo tiver em conta as preocupações daqueles que consideram que a adaptação necessita de um volume de recursos substancial e aqueles que consideram que de pouco valerá se apoiar a adaptação se as emissões continuarem a crescer de uma forma extremamente rápida, causando cada vez mais devastação por todo o mundo. Há, portanto, aqui um equilíbrio entre adaptação e mitigação que me parece importante resolver e estou convencido que a Presidência tudo fará para o alcançar e, obviamente, um dos problemas essenciais em relação ao nível de emissões que temos é o facto de os combustíveis fósseis representarem 80% das emissões. E, portanto, não há solução para os problemas se não houver simultaneamente uma transição justa dos combustíveis fósseis para as energias renováveis.
Thank you. Thais from Climate Home News, please.
Thank you. Following what you mentioned about finance and adaptation, and particularly on this COP30, what would you consider to be truly ambitious outcomes on the topic on public finance and adaptation? Thank you.
I mentioned in my intervention that I consider possible and desirable to triple adaptation finance until 2030. And I strongly hope that it will be possible to find a compromise in which developed countries accept to engage in these objectives and at the same time that their concerns about mitigation are also met by the COP.
Justin from BBC.
Hello, Secretary General. Secretary General, what message do you want this conference to send to Donald Trump?
We are waiting for you.
But do you also want to talk about whether he will engage in this process?
Sorry?
When will he begin to engage in this process?
I didn't understand, sorry. Can you...
I was asking, do you see a possibility of him engaging in this process in a positive way?
Hope is the last thing that dies.
Thank you so much. Kate from Reuters, please.
Thank you. Is a roadmap to transition away from fossil fuels vital to the outcome of this COP? And if that is not delivered as a deal that all countries here, not just some, sign up to, would you say that COP30 has failed?
I think this is not the moment to talk about the possible failure of the COP. It is the moment to guarantee that that failure doesn't occur. And so I am perfectly convinced that a compromise is possible, that to take into account, as I mentioned, the legitimate concerns of adaptation and the legitimate concerns of mitigation, which of course includes the necessity to take into account the question of fossil fuels, as it was done in the Dubai summit, COP.
Thanks. Justin from AFP, please. If you can stand, just.
Good morning. A significant number of countries, including large emitters, have not published their NDC yet, their climate plans. What is your message to them?
A group of countries has done? Huh? Well, my message is that it's absolutely essential to have NDCs as quickly as possible. But more than that, as looking at today's NDCs, they are far from being aligned in general, not everyone, but in general, far from being aligned with 1.5 degrees goal. We need to consider them as a floor, not a ceiling, and we need to make an effort in order to guarantee that we have a more drastic cut in emissions in the years to come.
I think we have time for one more. Jessica from Folha de São Paulo, please.
Hello, good morning. How do you see the resistance of parties such as the EU and the UK who are supporting the roadmap to transition away from fossil fuels, but do not want to talk about increasing finance, especially in adaptation? What would be your message to these countries?
I must tell you that I spoke with the overwhelming majority of those countries, and they seemed ready to engage with the financing of adaptation, having as a legitimate concern that that is balanced by progress in the key aspects of mitigation. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much.